This video will address a very common issue that many people are plagued with these restrictive stiffened postures, and that is when they attempt to look into another direction, they become unstable, they tip, they fall, all sorts of unpleasant things happen. So why is that such a problem? Well, for one, they are trying to turn into this new direction. They're trying to turn with their upper body. That is not what we naturally do. Now, yes, there are many times where you can just turn a little bit up here and do nothing down here, and it's perfectly fine. Except when you have the problem of it's not fine, it causes you problems. Well, most of the time when we quote unquote turn into another direction, what we are actually doing is rotating. We are rotating our body as a unit to look into that new direction. And what I just did was totally different from what I started doing. The turning movement is this. And notice the only thing that turned was you could see my shoulders and the rest of my body was twisting, except everything was happening up here and not much down there. Watch it again. There was no movement down here, or very, very little. Now that's the turning or twisting that gets people in trouble. So what we naturally do without realizing it is we rotate. And now you can see that down below my belt, my knees especially, they're doing a lot of movement. Now compare the twist, the turning movement, to the rotational movement. Totally different. Here, there's a change of pressure in my feet. Here, just turning like this, the pressure goes from two flattened feet to now the pressure's on the outside of this foot, pressure's on the inside of my right foot, and I'm a little bit unstable. Now you can say, yes, but you lean to the side to do that. Well, it happened again. I didn't go as far to the side. Well, my shoulders, though, led my body over to the side. My shoulders going back shifted that pressure. Everything was askew. Now, when I do it with a rotational movement of my knee, both feet stay flat on the floor right here. Yes, there is a small amount of pressure change, just like it was before, to the outside of my left foot and the inside of my right foot. But I'm not tipping. I'm stable. I'm having better control of the pressure of my feet. So those are the subtle differences of twisting, turning to look somewhere, and rotation to look. But the rotation is dependent on these knees flexing, working, staying flexed, and relaxed. And that's the big issue of why people just turn. So let's practice on that. And the one area to practice that is when sitting, standing. I'm going to use this chair first. Well, don't imagine. Have the chair back behind you just a little bit. And when you start to sit in this regular stance, look back for the chair. Oh, notice how this knee comes forward? My left knee came forward to push my body over to the right. I'm still stable. I can see where the chair's at. And nothing in my setup, in my stance and posture really changed. I'm down here in this beginning of a squat. I push this knee forward. Right there's the chair, I can see it. Oh, it's back a little bit too far. I'm gonna sit. Okay, I straighten that knee back out. And there I go. So, turning to look for the chair instead of the blind sitting. Push the knee forward, the body rotates. You're already in that stance. Your head's down a little bit, your shoulders are forward, and when you turn, it stays in that orientation, and there's your look. To reach back, squat a little bit more, maintaining these knees where they're at. Everything that you want to do, and you can take this to the bank, everything you want to do to reclaim in natural movements, natural ability, involves these being more useful, more relaxed, more functional. If they're not, you're going to have problems, as we all do. This is the big joint you want to work on to get working better. Because if these aren't, then everything is up here and everything is erratic, clumsy, unstable. This is all driven by the knees. And I can look at that chair and I can pull it forward. Control it and set. Where else do you use this rotational movement in other activities? Well, take your pick. What if you're playing tennis? I'm going to drop that ball and hit it. Rotational movement. Up here, I'm getting ready to swing for that ball. But this is what's rotating my body and getting me ready. This is where the power and control comes from. So when I go to hit it, this knee comes back, this knee, the other knee comes forward, and there it is. The golf swing. When you look at professional players or anybody that's really on top of their game, they're out there relaxed and they're in that golf swing and they don't look like they're putting much effort into it at all, but the ball just 200, 300 yards and off it goes. They say, my God, how are they generating that much power to be able to hit the ball that far? It doesn't look like they're making it look so easy. How can that be? Well, it's all down here. This is where that rotational movement comes from, and this is where the power comes from. Remember, you're pushing that pressure down into your feet using these working muscles. So they're generating a lot of power down here, and this rotational activity and the coming up as they're swinging, there's your power, there's your force. It's not up here. You can see that if you go out to any golf course, most any day, and watch different people swing their golf club. Some of them will do just perfectly like we just talked about, and they're in that nice and easy swing, and the others will do something like this. Because they are trying to do it all from their upper body. They're trying to muscle their way through it. But those with the good stance and the good technique, they're not trying to muscle their way through it. They're allowing their body rotation to do the work naturally. And that's where the better performance comes from. You see the same thing in baseball, softball, or any of these types of sports where you're swinging things. It's all the same thing. All of that is coming from stability and the power down here, not up here. Even swinging that racket to the tennis ball. Yes, you're contributing to it up here, no doubt, but the biggest, the most important part is down here. But the same thing is true for just the simple movement of turning to look into another direction, turning to look to see where the chair is. It's all the same concept. So with all those analogies I've just given you, much of the variability you see of how well the different people play the sport comes from their ability to keep these knees down and functioning and control that pressure in their feet. And of course, relaxing into it. That by far is the bigger piece of the puzzle than anything else you can imagine. That it's just, I want to relax and I want to just be able to use it. I want to just be able to be walking and be able to turn and not be so unstable. I don't want to have to stop every time, get my stability, and then slowly turn and try to look up. Wouldn't it be nice to have that ability when you're walking, just be able to turn and stay stable and control that pressure on your feet? Well, it's not that difficult when you learn how to use these and when you can relax and be able to use them better. The big issue many of you are going to have is the same issue that plagues all of us with these disorders that give us these stiffening postures and erratic movements. That physiological stiffening that we deal with, we can't do a lot with that. We can subdue it, we can reduce it a great deal in many situations, but then it always comes back. So you're always dealing with that. How do I relax more and more? What do I need to do in my posture to be able to just do that, to accomplish that bit and stay relaxed? It's going to be with you. You can't get rid of it completely. And I can't either. Every time I go out there on the golf course for my round of therapy, but for me, it's great because I'm still out there. But every time I go out there to play the round, whether it's 9 or 18 holes, I have to work on the exact same thing. How do I relax? What do I need to do? And you yourself have to come up with your little scheme of what you need to think about or do to make all this happen. What I have to do is knees down, relax my hands. I need to feel very relaxed hands and wrists. And then I have to remind myself again to flex those knees a little bit more. And then here I'm feeling it, but then when you start a movement, as we've talked about before, a lot of that stiffness starts because you'll tighten your hands up a little bit, and now before you know it, then you're coming through, you're tightening without realizing it, you're tightening, and then when you come through that gorilla swing, where in the hell did that come from? Well, it's from that unrecognized stiffening. I've found my ways to deal with that the best I can. You have to find yours. But in these activities that you're doing, remember that takeaway or that start of the movement. That's when some of the stiffening may come. So with me, with the golf swing, I ground that club. I let it rest on the ground, and then I relax into it, and then I take it away. Now, if I have a little bit of stiffness down on that club, then it drags on the ground, and I have to stop and restart all over again. But if I tried to hold that club up off the ground just a half inch or whatever, like some of the pros recommend, I stiffen up and I can't do it. Some of you will be able to, some of you won't. But the same thing applies to all this other stuff. You have to find your way to relax to be able to get these knees to do this rotational movement for you. And when you have that happening in this relaxed posture during that activity, everything will happen so much better, and you'll have such a better time of doing it. You'll say, oh my God, this is what it used to feel like, or almost what it used to feel like. It'll be so much better. But when you're having those bad days, no matter what you're doing, the first place you need to look is down here, because this is the first most common place where your problems are going to be, down here. And to relax these, to get them working better, thing up here needs to be relaxed. The second most common mistake people make with these is up here. First, down here. If you can get control of these, you'll have control up here, because this has to be in control to have these in control. Yes, there are some nuances with that, some subtle differences where that may not strictly apply, but for all practical purposes, that's exactly what you need to focus on. It's a rotational movement. When you're practicing doing this just a little bit, yes, you can be on your flattened feet. But as I'm doing this, notice I'm stopping right here. And that's because things are starting to get a little bit tight down here. Things are becoming too fixed. So to be able to do this, where do I need to be on my feet to allow that to happen? Well, I need to have the pressure forward over the ball areas of my feet more than in my heels. Now that foot can easily bring that heel up. Actually, the knee is bringing it up by the knee going forward. You don't even have to try to do anything with the foot, and please don't. Just focus on pushing the knee forward, and there's your bigger rotation. So increased pressure in the forward part of your foot, the ball area of your foot, to allow this rotation to happen. And as you're doing all those other activities we were talking about, that is where the pressure is. It's not back here. If you try to do it on your heels, you're not going to have very much success. And that is a big problem with people with these stiffened postures trying to turn and they're back on their heels, gone. So this is another reminder of get used to having that pressure a little bit forward in your feet, because many of the things that you're doing and will be doing and want to be doing require that you control that pressure towards the front of your foot and keep it there to be able to do all those extra movements. And as I've said in previous videos, when we start moving from this spot to that spot and side strides and going forward, it's imperative that you can control that pressure in the front area of your foot and allow that heel to raise up. And that requires using these muscles, the gastroc and the soleus, better to push extra pressure in the ball area and toes of that foot to allow all of that to happen. So, rotation, knees. Take some work. Play the games. Start looking for the chair. Start challenging yourself to reach for the chair. Do it both ways. Get these things moving. Because all of these little things that you're learning to do, postural control, building on your feet, allowing a little bit more coordinated movement, all of this equates to improving movement. That's what you're after. Keep with it. You can do it.